In the village of Nambala, nestled between parched hills and cracked earth, Mama Ayo lived in a small mud house with a thatched roof that had outlived storms and seasons. Her home, though humble, glowed with warmth. The scent of spiced stew and wood smoke always lingered in the air. Despite the years of drought, she kept a small fire burning and cooked her son's favorite okra soup every Thursday, just as she had before he left for the city. Every evening she sat by the fire, placed the bowl of soup on a grass mat, and whispered prayers into the wind. The villagers passed by, watching her with a mix of pity and confusion. "She's talking to the wind again," they'd mutter, shaking their heads. Yet Mama Ayo's face held peace, a kind of radiant stillness that made some pause before turning away. Her hope wasn't loud, it was quiet, steady, like the flame she guarded. Life in Nambala was hard. The riverbed had long dried up, crops failed more often than not, and animals walked with ribs showing. But the people adapted. They dug deeper wells, prayed louder, and laughed harder to forget their burdens. Mama Ayo, however, remained unchanged, still lighting her fire, still cooking, still praying. Children whispered jokes about the old woman who cooked for a ghost. Teenagers mimicked her prayer poses. Even adults, though more respectful, often shared knowing glances. "She refuses to see the truth," they'd say. "That boy of hers is never coming back." But Mama Ayo never responded with anger. Her smile was gentle but firm. When a neighbor teased, "The wind cannot carry your prayers to someone who does not listen," she simply replied, "The wind knows where love lives." And then she'd close her eyes and let her voice rise softly into the breeze. 1. Morning. As the village prepared for another hot, dry day, the postman arrived on his worn-out bicycle. He rarely stopped in Nambala anymore. Most people had nothing left to send or receive. But this time, he stopped outside Mama Ayo's gate. A hush fell over the neighbors watching from their verandas. The postman held a crumpled envelope, edges browned by time. "Mama Ayo," he called. She stepped out, wiping her hands on her faded wrapper. The moment her eyes met the envelope, her breath caught. It was her son's handwriting. Hands trembling, she opened it slowly. The letter was short, filled with apologies, guilt, and longing. He had gone to the city to make a life, but shame kept him away when he failed. He had fallen ill, but something in his soul yearned for home, yearned for her. He was coming back. He wrote, if only to see her face one last time. Tears streamed down her face, soaking the letter as she clutched it to her chest. The neighbors watched in silence now, the laughter drained from their lips. On Thursday, Mama Ayo prepared the okra soup again, but this time with a different energy. She wore her best head wrap and scrubbed the veranda clean. She even sang softly, a lullaby from her youth. As the sun began to set, a figure appeared down the road, leaning on a stick, thin and tired, but undeniably him, her son. Gasps escaped from watching mouths. Children stopped their play. The wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Mama Ayo ran, not fast but with purpose. She reached him, touched his face, and he collapsed into her arms. "Mama," he whispered, "your prayers, they never stopped." She smiled through tears. "No, my son, not once." The villagers watched, shamed and humbled. The woman they mocked had been right all along. And as the two sat beside the fire eating soup under the stars, Mama Ayo whispered her final prayer. Not one of longing, but of thanks. That night the wind carried no pleas, only gratitude. The next morning, the village of Nambala stirred with an unfamiliar stillness. The usual chatter, the clanging of buckets, and the restless bleating of goats were replaced with quiet murmurs. Everyone was thinking about Mama Ayo, about her son, about the okra soup that had filled the air every Thursday for years, and the prayers they had dismissed as madness. Elder Dogo, the village chief, stood outside his compound longer than usual. His wife nudged him. "You laugh too," she said softly. He nodded, eyes fixed on the path leading to Mama Ayo's home. By midday, visitors began to arrive at Mama Ayo's house. One brought yams. Another came with a fresh jug of palm wine. Some only brought their silence, but they all came with something they hadn't brought before: respect. Mama Ayo welcomed each one with her gentle smile, but her focus remained on her son, Olumide. He lay on a mat, weak but smiling, his head in her lap. She wiped his forehead with a damp cloth, humming that same lullaby she sang on the day he returned. He looked up at her, voice hoarse. "Mama, I don't deserve this love. I left, I didn't write, I let you grow old alone." She brushed his cheek. "You came back. That's what matters. My prayers were never about what you did. They were about who you are, my child." Tears ran down Olumide's face. "I thought I was too broken to be forgiven." Mama Ayo shook her head. "No child is ever too broken for a mother's love, or for the power of prayer." That evening, something shifted in the village. The fire in front of Mama Ayo's house seemed brighter. The laughter of children sounded less hollow. Even the trees, dry and tired, rustled with a gentler rhythm. And for the first time in years, the air carried a different kind of whisper, not just from the wind, but from hearts learning how to hope again. Olumide's strength slowly returned. He began helping Mama Ayo in the garden again, pulling weeds, planting cassava. The neighbors often passed by, greeting him with warmth, even offering help. The village was healing, not just from the drought, but from something deeper: neglect, judgment, and pride. One Sunday, the church bell rang louder than usual. Elder Dogo stood up during the village meeting and said, "We were wrong about Mama Ayo, and her prayers saved not just her son, but reminded us of something we forgot: faith." A small committee was formed to help elderly villagers. A new well was planned near Mama Ayo's home. Children began visiting her, asking her to tell stories about the old days. They sat in circles around her as she spoke about love, about waiting, about prayer. One evening, Olumide brought her a new wooden stool he carved himself. "So you don't have to sit on the hard ground anymore," he smiled. She touched the smooth wood, tears brimming in her eyes. "You came back to me twice, my son, first with your feet, and now with your heart." He held her hand. "You never gave up on me, Mama. I don't think I even knew what real love was until I came home." This. Stars above them blinked gently. The fire crackled as always. But now it wasn't just Mama Ayo's flame. It belonged to the whole village. Years later, when the rains returned and green once again embraced Nambala, Mama Ayo's hair had turned silver white. Her movement slower, her voice softer, but her heart still steady. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with gold, she sat beside Olumide's young daughter, humming that same lullaby. The little girl looked up. "Grandma, who taught you that song?" Mama Ayo smiled. "The wind. It sings when you pray with your heart." That night she sat by her fire one last time. Olumide found her at dawn, eyes closed, face serene, her hands resting gently in her lap. The fire had burned low, but it still glowed. The village gathered quietly. There were no cries, no wails, only silent reverence. She had lived a life of patience, of unwavering love, of prayer that changed hearts. Olumide lit the fire again. "She prayed every day," he said, "and in her last prayer she gave us all something to believe in." The wind carried her final whisper, not of longing, not even of thanks, but of peace. And in that peace, Nambala stood stronger than ever before.